Hi everyone, welcome back to another build video. This is another paper theater video, and this one's rated 2.5 out of 5 difficulty, and this one is PT-131 from Ensky, and it's titled Mirai, and the Japanese title would be Mirai no Mirai, or the English translation would be Mirai from the future. And if you have not watched this movie, it is actually a Japanese animation movie, and it is about a kid named Kun, and he has a sister, Mirai, who's an infant, and he's trying to pretty much deal with the fact that he has a sister and that kind of his parents are all putting their attention to the daughter, Mirai, and so he has these fits and he has these moments where he feels like he's not being paid attention to or being loved, and every time something happens, something magical happens there's a tree that's actually at their house, and the best way to explain it is that it kind of connects the past, the present, and the future. And so in one instance, Mirai, the sister, actually comes from the future and kind of helps Kun deal with a situation, and then in another instance he goes to some other magical world and he meets this person and learns how to ride a bike through this person, and then later it's revealed that it was actually his grandfather when the grandfather was really young. So it's a very interesting movie in the sense of it kind of has this mysticism, very magical, but still kind of grounded in reality a little bit. And it is a very interesting movie. I don't know if it's going to be to everyone's cup of tea, but I actually enjoyed the movie a lot, and so I would recommend watching the movie. The best way to put it is that Kun, while dealing with these situations, he's learning to grow up a little bit from being the only child and kind of being a brat in a sense, to learning to deal with situations, kind of overcome obstacles, and kind of learning more about his family through history or the future. And it is a family film, and it is about family in general and family ties that you make. So it is a very interesting film on how they deal with issues like that or ideas like that, and it is a very Japanese film in that manner. As I've stated earlier, this build is actually 2.5 out of 5, but I would actually rate it 3 or maybe even 3.5, just because of the amount of detail going into Kun, the little boy, and Mirai, the young girl who's in a schoolgirl outfit. And the reason why has to just do with the amount of detail that goes into those two characters, and there are a lot of small parts. It's not really difficult, but there are a tricky area or two, and it really has to do with, let's say for example, Mirai's clothes. Because of the ruffles in her clothes, especially her skirt and her uniform outfit, there are a lot of these kind of gaps in the material because they're using it as a shadow. Because of that, when you're gluing it on, there may be a chance that the paper shifts a little bit in certain parts, so you want to make sure that before the glue dries that you have the parts actually in place. And you have to be careful, it's not like the other ones where it's just one piece, and as long as you get that whole piece aligned, it's fine. Parts of the pieces will be aligned differently just because the gap will actually make the paper bend in certain locations. So you just want to be really careful and make sure that you work quickly and align those little parts. Other than that, it is pretty straightforward. It's just there are a lot of layers for Mirai and Kun, and if you get the first layer kind of aligned wrongly, in this case I've been working on her hands and every little finger has to be aligned, and since it's a small area, the glue does dry really quickly, so it's kind of about moving quickly and just making sure that things are aligned properly, because if it's misaligned on the first layer, then the subsequent layers above will actually be misaligned also. So what I'm doing here is actually using a knife to kind of make a separation between her skin around her waist with her clothes, and that is just because instead of putting the paper right up against the other paper and creating no gap, I wanted to create a slight gap because the background is black, and if you notice there's a lot of black lines kind of to give that anime line work for this model. that I wanted to make a gap in between so that it looks like there is a line between the skin and the clothes, so that it kind of gives off the anime vibe even more. I've mentioned this in other videos in the past, but when I'm working on the paper theater builds, I like using Mod Podge and a paintbrush, just because I can actually get a very thin layer on, and it does get applied pretty easily, and you don't get a lot of clumping, and you don't get a lot of areas where the glue will squeeze out and then makes a kind of messy edge. So it's just a little technique that I like using for these, just because I can kind of control where to apply the glue a little bit better. And then I would actually finish it up and by cleaning the edges or the gaps using a toothpick or sometimes the back with the X-Acto knife, just to kind of clean out the edges and make it look a little bit cleaner. If you've worked on one of these paper theater builds, or actually any paper models in general, and I'm actually curious to know what kind of techniques you have to make sure that it's a kind of clean build. What kind of glue do you use? Is there any techniques that you would like to share? And if you do, leave some comments on the bottom, because I will like to read some ideas about how you guys do these things, just because I found that this is just kind of my method, because I think it's kind of easier for me to do this and it's actually clean. But there are always different ways to do it, and I'm actually really curious to see what you guys think. So I made a mistake here. Usually I like overlaying first to see where the overlap is and just only glue that area, but in this case I accidentally glued the whole red side, and most of the red ribbon was actually being exposed, that I actually had to wipe it off and then kind of use X-Acto knife to kind of scrape off the remaining glue. When you're working on Kun, you're going to notice that the top head that you glue to the black background is slightly smaller, and I've noticed that when you try to align the hair to the right side, you're going to get a lot of black on the left side being exposed, and I thought this was a mistake, so I tried to kind of move it around and align it. But when I looked at the original package, I think this was intentional to kind of give more of a shadow, that don't worry about leaving that gap on the left side. It is supposed to be that way intentionally, and so just do your best to try to align the hair on the right side so that it lines up with the black edge, so that it has just a kind of clean line. So I think, in my opinion, Kun was actually harder to do than Mirai, even though Mirai had more layers. There were a lot more smaller parts to deal with Kun, just because he is a kid, and as you can see, they kind of they don't overlap, they actually are adjacent to each other, and it does fill up the space quite a bit. So it is kind of difficult if you get one of the pieces wrong in the beginning. So just dealing with these small pieces, it's really hard for me to kind of pick it with my fingers, and sometimes using a tweezer doesn't really help, because as they're trying to pick it up, because it's so small, it will sometimes rotate or sometimes flip while I'm holding in my tweezer. So I've actually thought that Kun was a lot more difficult to do than Mirai. Just out of curiosity, what is your favorite Japanese animation movie? If you have one, please leave a comment so that I can see. My favorite actually is Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli. I just love the depths and kind of the storytelling method of that movie, and I really think it is a classic masterpiece of Japanese animation. And I'm wondering if you have any other that you would maybe suggest that I can watch. I have seen quite a few, but I'm just wondering what you guys love watching. And here is the fourth layer that is magically done. I apologize, I thought I hit record, and unfortunately I didn't, so we're going to be skipping that step, and I'm showing you the fifth layer. So the fourth, fifth, and sixth layer are all background, and it is actually mostly clouds, and the clouds are using 3 different colors to kind of show different shades of the cloud itself, which I really love. So you have your white, your cyan, and your blue that kind of make up the different shades within the cloud. It's very reminiscent of Hokusai's The Great Wave of Kanagawa painting, and that would actually be a very interesting one to do as a paper theater build. I can kind of see how that can be built as a paper theater with multiple layers to kind of depict the waves, so maybe that can be a future project. There is a wood puzzle build of that painting that's done, and it is on Amazon. Maybe I will actually purchase and do that build video one day. It looks really awesome. I've always wanted to do it. And here are the 6 layers for this build. As you can see, the front 3 elements have entourage on it, and then the back 3 are the cloud, and it's actually the background element. As with the other videos, one method I like using a lot for these builds, for putting it all together, is that I would actually use a little squeeze bottle that has tacky glue inside, and just kind of squeeze in a little bit of glue within the edge of the tab, as you can see here, and that's all the glue you need. You don't need a lot of glue to hold the layers in place. The first tab or 2 is actually difficult to put it in, just because it does move around a lot because nothing's actually standing in place yet. But once you get to about the 3rd or 4th tab, it actually becomes easier because you already have your other corners kind of holding the layers in place, and with the right separations, that it's actually easier to just insert in. But as you can see here, I can just slide it in later on, as a lot easier, but the first 2 is always hardest. As I wrap up this video, I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you like watching this video, please subscribe to my channel and look out for posts, because I will be doing regular postings of new videos, regardless of if it's paper theater or some kind of metal model. I will be posting regularly, so please check it out. And here's the final model, Mirai from the future. This is PT-131, and I think it came out great. I didn't really make any mistakes here, and as you can see, it looks really great with a lot of details. And thank you for watching.